presentation is very personal, and I've got a card for each slide, so I hope I can keep up. So 20 years ago I came across this enchanting place, Essington Park, an old homestead built in 1860 on an acreage surrounded by cultivated farmland. It became my muse and is where I have made my quintessential paintings, very dear to me. My studio is down the paddock, a short walk from the house. It is a very big, naturally lit space. I share it now with the beautiful sculptor, Harry Fasher. We are separated by a tall wall and a small door, but I can feel her creative spirit gently humming through. The thing I enjoy about the Oberon landscape is the geometry pushing against the natural elements. The roads, fences, planted tree lines, paddocks. I use this as a device to bring structure to the composition. I included this slide as an example of a work that almost killed me. It was a commission for a big corporate space in Melbourne. It is a painting of the conifer in my front paddock. I needed 4 milk crates to reach the top. 2 Christmases ago, I made some plein air paintings of my garden. It was a very liberating experience. I was surprised at how relatively easy it was to capture the essence of my garden. I adopted a very deliberate, emphatic response, almost like I didn't need to look at the painting as I was making it. Almost like I was channeling the shapes and colours as I had already learnt it. It was very immediate and a very spontaneous process. I made numerous paintings all the while looking at Morandi, Mondrian and Cézanne. I began to pare down extraneous detail. The painting became quite minimalist, but at the same time seemed to evoke everything about the garden. One of the residencies I had at Hill End was at the Hayfliggers cottage. I spent 2 months there painting the landscape reflected into windows and gathering visual information to build a body of work. I liked the idea that I was continuing a landscape painting tradition, a tradition synonymous with Hill End, where Russell Drysdale, Donald Friend and Margaret Olley first came to paint, and later Brett Whiteley and many other contemporary artists. Later I stayed at Warry's cottage and made plein air painting of the surrounding landscape and the Turon River. Sorry. In 2012, I entered into a special relationship which took me to Melbourne. I now have a studio there in a big warehouse with 25 other artists. This is a painting I made of the docklands in Melbourne. I often walk along the Yarra River where there are areas which are quite wooded and rugged. This is a painting I made after one of my walks called Yarra Bend, quite reminiscent of the Australian bush. When I'm in the city, I often get homesick for the landscape. This painting was made from memory. I tried to recall the visceral sensation of being in the Oberon landscape by transporting myself back there whilst making the work. This is a painting I made about Lake George. I feel this painting speaks of the spirit and mystery of the lake, where the water is elusive but sometimes envelops the bush. I have traversed this landscape for many years. It's very precious to me. In April, I undertook a residency on Bruny Island. I spent 3 solid weeks walking, reading and painting in this very basic bush studio. It was a quiet and contemplative time where I made lots of psychological and emotional shifts. I made many paintings, including these works of the bay on plein air. I learned a lot about being resourceful and staying open and letting the landscape speak to me by shutting my intellect off. Last year I started painting the Gundagai bridges. They are historic, dilapidated wooden structures which span almost a kilometre across the floodplain. I tried to portray the resilience of the structure as well as its fragility. This is a painting by Danish painter PechaKucha. He is the painter I look to when I get blocked. They are honest, emotionally charged paintings. I find them risky paintings. They inspire me to push past what I know. This is a portrait Alfred Stieglitz made of his wife, Georgia O'Keeffe. She was a great painter, but it is her life that inspires me most. She lived the last 30 years in the New Mexico desert on her own. She lived an autonomous and free life, making great work.